Just 6 days after dislocating his kneecap, Patrick Mahomes was back at Chiefs practice. Yes, he was limited, but he was there and he was moving. A much welcome sight after some thought he would be out for a lot longer. And here's the part that has Chiefs fans giddy. He has not been ruled out for Sunday night's game against the Packers. Nick, we'll start with you with this one. Would the Chiefs be making a mistake, a big mistake, rushing Mahomes back too soon?
Yeah, absolutely. And consider this Chief fan right here not giddy with any idea that he could play. Now, if they want to make the Packers prepare for the possibility he's going to be on the field, because obviously it's a very different defensive game plan if you're playing Matt Moore than if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, and they want to add that to one of the only advantages they have this weekend, the misdirection, fine. But there is no chance whatsoever, no way whatsoever, they should put Patrick Mahomes out there Sunday night. I don't think there is any way whatsoever they should put him out there the following Sunday against Minnesota. Now, am I willing over the next 2 weeks as he practices soften my stance that he should be out all the way until the bye? Sure. I think it's somewhat unbelievable that a week ago this evening, he was having his kneecap relocated, reduced back into place on the field, and that yesterday he was on the practice field. It's a testament to the Chiefs training staff, it's a testament to being a young guy and his body healing quicker and no real damage being done. But he can't play Sunday, Chris. Under no circumstances can you put Patrick Mahomes on the field against that Green Bay pass rush with the Chiefs beat up offensive line with his ankle still injured. 8 days, or I guess it'd be 10 days after the kneecap dislocation.
Nick, I totally agree with you. If he's a normal guy, if he's Nick Wright or someone else trying to go about their business, I totally agree with you. But this is what the greatest football players ever played this game. This is what they have done. The reason why the league is what it is. In this brutal sport, guys have played through being injured and chancing their career. That's what the league is made on. So without the guarantees, the mentality of football players, yeah, there's pro baseball, there's pro basketball, there's hockey. But, man, there's nothing like being a pro football player. You only got 16 dates, and the players don't want to miss. And that's the reason why I like not having fully guaranteed contracts, because when you don't have fully guaranteed contracts, it forces you to go beyond what you typically would do. If Patty Mahomes had $150 million guaranteed, I'm telling you, he would think about not playing. But it's still the football mentality. Brett Farve, the guy who he's compared with more than any other quarterback. What do you respect most about Brett Farve?
Never, ever missed.
Never, ever missed. And I'm going to tell you something. There were a lot of Wednesdays. There were a lot of Fridays where he was going to be out. He was going to be doubtful. There were 2 times in my career. Once when I had a high ankle sprain, I decided to go against the doctor and go and play. Did it set me back? A couple years later, I did have to have a surgery. My shoulder, the same ring, came back from a broken collarbone in 4 weeks. The following year, had to have surgery when I separated my AC joint. Does it still give me problems to this day? Absolutely. Was it worth it, both of those occasions? Yes. I don't have the same amount of movement in my right ankle that I have in my left, but was it worth it? Absolutely. My shoulder right now, I feel like 5 of the 7 days a week, I feel like I have a pinched nerve on my right side. Why? Because I rushed myself back onto the field. But that was kind of the thing that I was known for. My overall durability, not only just my talent, but my availability, because I do believe that's a skill. And it's going to be hard to keep Patty Mahomes. Just as you were shocked that he was at practice yesterday, I'll be shocked if he's not under center on Sunday, especially after participating in a Wednesday practice that you don't have to. He could have easily sat out Wednesday, Thursday, said, I'm going to test drive it on Friday, which is the normal routine. For him to be out there on Wednesday lets you know he is going to be. Ain't no decoys on Wednesday.
So you think he's going to play?
I know he is.
That's shocking to me. That's shocking. I obviously am not saying you're wrong. We can't know until Sunday. But you and I didn't.
Let's do Amari Cooper last week. Last week, Amari Cooper didn't practice Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday. The team said, listen, if you're going to play on Sunday, you must practice on Friday. And then they worked him out before the game. Patty Mahomes is already on the practice field on Wednesday when the coaching staff and the training staff is saying if he had any discomfort let's just wait 24 hours, Patty. Like, we're not in no rush. Let's wait 48 hours till Friday. So for me, I'd totally be shocked. Patty Mahomes is going to play against the Green Bay Packers.
Well, for a guy as important to an organization and a franchise as Patrick Mahomes, if you're the team, wouldn't you want to err on the side of caution? Even if Patrick Mahomes says, I want to play, I'm ready, I feel good. If you're Andy Reid and your entire success, because he dislocated his kneecap.
How do you know he's not? He's going to go to practice. He's going to throw the ball. How's the team going to hold him out if he can throw the ball?
Well, it's more his mobility.
Right. He's not going to have full mobility this Sunday.
Of course not.
Well, that's,
But part of Patty Mahomes' greatness is not that he's mobile.
Well, no, part of his greatness is that he's mobile. The entirety of his greatness is not that he's mobile. He would be great just sitting in the pocket. Agreed on that. But you made a very interesting point earlier, which is part of the story of this game is guys playing through injury. But unfortunately, another part of the story of this game is the untold story of players whose careers were cut short because of this exact reason. We all talk about RG3 and the play when Haloti Ngata blew out his knee. He was already hurt in that football game. If you watch that game, and I know you remember it, I know you remember it, it was a playoff game, and there was speculation, should he be out there? Now, maybe RG3 was a fait accompli. Maybe at some point his body wasn't built for this game. I don't know. But I do know that there is a possibility that there is a whole RG3 story we never got to see because it was a playoff game. Because it was such a vital, critical
Ultimately,
moment.
Nick, though, it's not about the fans. It's not about Andy Reid. It's not about that doctor. This is Patty Mahomes' career. That's his body. That's his knee. It's his decision to make. All right? Yeah, you guys will participate in it, but it's my decision to make if I'm going to play. He's going to be cleared by the doctors to be able to play if he can tolerate it. It's called pain threshold. How much can you take? And the best players ever played this game, their pain threshold was really, really high. The best quarterbacks ever played this game, and we don't see it a lot more because you don't have to be tough to play this game. But the best guys that ever been under center, that have played in the NFL, have been tough. I wouldn't be surprised at all that Patty Mahomes was to play. And the decision, it should be his. It shouldn't be a doctor's because greatness, we don't know. And what if you stop him from doing something? Like, the doctor doesn't actually know if you can make it through this little phase. That's why it's called a doctor-patient relationship.
Well, let me ask you real quick on this, because you said it's Patrick Mahomes' decision. Do you not feel there is, let's take the fans out of it, an organizational responsibility at some times to protect a player from himself?
Yeah, at some point, yes. But also, Nick, but this is my career. All right? You're going to sign a lot of, if you're the general manager, you're going to have a lot of more players. My career is going to be directed by me. I will make the best decisions for me and for my family. And just because you guys are a little antsy or something about the pain and everything, that's why he's a football player.
So this decision will just be Patrick Mahomes?
No, you get cleared first.
I'm sure.
But ultimately, Andy Reid's going to look at him and say, Patty, can you do it? And then there's going to be a trust factor. All right? That's the big thing in sports. Do we trust them? Last year, they trusted Kevin Durant. All right? He ended up getting injured. But that's all part of it, man. That's what you sign up for. There ain't no rose-colored men like, oh, this is all going to just work out. Patty Mahomes is going to be MVP again. No, they're called hurdles. They're called obstacles. And it what forces people to be great. And that's what I'm hoping Patty Mahomes plays, because that's what I grew up watching. When Roger Staubach was playing for the Cowboys, that's what I was watching. Dan Marino got knocked down, that's what I was watching. Brett Farve, every single week. Peyton Manning, the greatest ever played, they were the toughest. And I believe Patty Mahomes, he wants to be in that class.
Sixers opened up their season against the Boston Celtics last night, and they looked impressive. Ben Simmons led the way with 24 points. None from beyond the arc, however. While Joel Embiid chipped in 15 points, 13 rebounds, their defense was stellar, holding the Celtics to just 37% shooting. CeCe, what did the Sixers show you last night?
They're ginormous. The team is huge. I mean, in this day and age of basketball with the three-point shooting, very seldom do you see teams just try to be bigger. It was always in the 70s and 80s, 90s, always. Several teams were going to be ginormous. That's what they are. Joel Embiid trying to find himself playing next to
Al Horford.
Al Horford. That right there, having another big guy on the court, it's going to take some time. He did play under control last night. Ben Simmons was the star of the game. They're so much better than the Celtics. Like, it still might be a rivalry because just they've been playing each other for a long time, location and everything. But, you know, they got so much more talent. So I'm looking forward to seeing this talent gel. I believe it's going to take at least 20 games with some of these new pieces that they've brought over. But good basketball team. If they're not in the Eastern Conference Finals, it's been a bad year.
It's shocking. Listen, we said a moment ago that there's uncertainty surrounding this season. The thing I am most certain of is that the Eastern Conference is going to come down to Philadelphia and Milwaukee in a brutal 7-game knockdown drag-out series. Everything else in the East is kind of what's leading up to that. One note on the Celtics, a positive note for the Celtics. Gordon Hayward looked as good as he's looked in his Celtics uniform against a great defense. Gordon Hayward with 25 points. Obviously, Jaylen Brown had a brutal game. Kemba Walker had an awful debut. But a lot of players are going to have 4 for 18, 3 for 11 nights like you saw Celtics have last night against this Philly defense. Before Kawhi and Paul George came together, when we heard Al Horford was coming to Philly, we said, man, this is going to be the best defensive team in basketball. The amount of length.
And then they get Richardson from Miami.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They bring him over. They lose Jimmy Butler, obviously. But when you can start Ben Simmons, Richardson, Horford, Harris, Embiid, you have such overwhelming length, you're not going to have to be a great offense. The Sixers can play kind of an old school Sixers style of basketball, try to beat you up in the post and play suffocating defense. You saw that last night. I bet the Sixers will lead the NBA this year in holding their opponent under 100. Game's a hell of a lot easier if you only have to get to 100 instead of 110, 115. To me, that was the story of last night.
We looked at the Sixers team. There were 3 things I think we all thought were question marks coming in. Ben Simmons, is he ever going to shoot from deep? We saw what he was doing in the offseason. How Joel Embiid was going to look. He talked a lot about focusing on the physical aspect of his body. And then if it was on the coaching, if Brett Brown was the right guy to lead this group of people, and then obviously how Simmons and Horford would play. If they don't make the conference finals, what would be the reason why this team can't? Would it be one of those things?
Well, I believe that, first of all, Joel Embiid, you can look at his body and you can tell. The problem is, over the course of the season, is he able to maintain that conditioning? I thought last night, with new faces on the court, he played within himself. You know, he is a defensive force. His offensive skill is second to none of any big man that we do have. Ben Simmons is the tricky part, because with Richardson, who's a good three-point shooter, Al Horford, good three-point shooter, I don't want him to force, because the public sentiment is, oh, he's got to shoot, he's got to shoot. It's about winning, playing to the strength of your team and everything. Him shooting the ball outside of 6 feet is not one of the strengths. So I'm not going to get on TV and waste my breath and everything. They put other shooters around him. They are not expecting him to be a shooter. So Brett Brown, I believe there will always be question marks as far as him. Last year, he didn't hurt his reputation by losing the buzzer beater to Kawhi, because they've been like, if we don't lose that one, then we're in the finals. So I think he helped himself. How can he build on that, though? Those 3 aspects, I think, are well covered. But the Ben Simmons part, we have to also understand they have a team concept, and he can't just shoot threes just to make the public happy.
And what we need to see from Ben Simmons is a game not like last night where he's getting wherever he wants on the court, but a game where he can't get to where he wants on the court. Can he open up the court a bit? Forget a three-pointer with a 12-footer. That was the most jarring thing about last year.
12 feet right now is like 40.
Right. So he shot less than 1 shot per game outside of 10 feet. It was just an absurdity. I think he made less than 15 of those shots all season long. Ben Simmons last night was the best player on the court. Joel Embiid was in foul trouble. Joel Embiid did not play a great game. He didn't even play 30 minutes last night. Ben Simmons was their best guy offensively. The question is, when you play a team with more resistance, when you play a team who doesn't have our friend of the show and my new friend Enes Kanter as their defensive stopper, like what else can you do? But this is a great start for the Sixers.
Yeah.
Nice, easy victory, and I think they're going to have a lot of those in the Eastern Conference this year, which has a bunch of above-average teams, but only 2 excellent teams.
To the latest now with the Philadelphia Eagles, a team now below 500, in the middle of a brutal 6-game stretch. and seemingly riddled with locker room issues. It was rumored that Alshon Jeffrey was behind anonymous reports criticizing Carson Wentz, and when asked about it, Wentz said the two were, quote, all good. Former Eagle Chris Long also chimed in and said, quote, Carson is not the problem. See, is Chris Long right that Wentz isn't the problem here?
Well, man, Chris Long's a great guy. He's been a great teammate no matter where he's been. First part of his career, didn't win at all there with the Rams. Towards the end of his career, that's all he did. He is a different human being. For him to even speak out on this, he felt like he had to, compared to no comment. So for me, I know that he wouldn't be rushed into just saying something, and he wouldn't come to a defense inside of a locker room. He knows that something that could really start, a controversy. But he's right. I trust the guys that have been in the locker room. A wide receiver, a conversation, trying to be anonymous, saying something about a teammate and everything, not surprised at all. That's what wide receivers do. They bicker, they're unhappy. Right now, Alshon Jeffrey's not happy with his role there, all right? And him and Carson, they haven't won nothing together. The guys in Philadelphia, what about the people in the locker room that built a shrine to Nick Foles? So I'm getting ready to come to work. I got $100 million guaranteed. I'm the franchise quarterback. And you think I get to walk past a shrine to some other quarterback who now isn't even on the team? So I thought there potentially could be problems because these are real issues. Now, Carson tried to take the high road and said there is no problem, but there will always be a problem with Carson and Alshon Jeffries now. Now it's just a matter of how much longer does Alshon Jeffrey, does he salvage his career there with the Eagles? Because Carson Wentz is definitely going to be there.
So as far as is Carson Wentz part of the problem personality-wise, which is what I believe Chris Long's talking about, I'm not going to lay a tremendous amount at his feet. Carson laid some at his own feet this offseason after that article in one of the Philly newspapers, and he said, hey, there's some truth to it to a degree. There is some growing I need to do. Now, the fact that he was self-aware enough to say there's some growing I need to do leads me to believe he's self-aware enough to actually go through that growing. And I think Chris is right that this might just be a disgruntled receiver because his numbers or the production isn't where he wanted it to be. As far as is Carson Wentz part of the problem on the field, everyone in Philly has to own this. The coach has to own this. The GM, who we talk about in really glowing terms, Howie Roseman, about what a smart GM he is. Well, GM's intelligence is determined very simply. How good is the team you have assembled? And they have assembled a team for the here and now. Not that they have mortgaged their future, but it's not like we say, well, Philly, it's about the 2022 season. Yep. It's about right now. And right now, Philadelphia is about the 10th or 11th best team in their own conference. They're clearly the second best team at this moment in their own division. So, of course, the GM, the coach, and the quarterback all have to own that. Now, the offensive line, defensive line. No, I don't think there's anyone in Philly that comes to work and says, man, I've been doing my job great this year. I don't know what the problem is, but it ain't me. I think everyone on that football team recognizes they need to do a better job. We have seen the coach try to press whatever buttons he can press to get this team going. I don't know what buttons Carson can press other than play better. And Carson hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been anywhere close to the league MVP caliber guy we saw a couple years ago. I don't know if Carson is a great motivator. I don't know if Carson is a guy that when we hear about with some quarterbacks, man, I would follow him through a brick wall. I don't know if Carson is just, average motivator, average leader, awesome athlete, great thrower of the football, and that's how he leads guys. But right now in Philly, it's a disaster. 3-4 for this team is unacceptable, especially given the relative softness of their schedule and the fact that we saw when they are clicking, they can go to Green Bay and win. Like, we know they do have some high-level ability, but we also saw they can get embarrassed on national television by the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, one thing I do know, though, Carson Wentz, he don't rush the passer. He's not a linebacker. He don't cover them running backs in space. He don't play corner, give up bomb after bomb. Yep. Safety, missing the coverage in the hole. Carson Wentz. I don't know what kind of leader he is, but I know he didn't do that. So I know we like to put a lot of blame on the quarterback. We always give him too much credit.
But he doesn't play secondary.
Thank you. So let's stop this. Carson Wentz is not the problem there. Did they like Nick Foles? Yeah, they like Nick Foles, part-time Nick Foles, but the full-time starter Nick Foles, Alshon will be complaining, D-Jack will be complaining, Philadelphia Eagles be complaining because he wasn't consistent enough. Right. That's how he became a backup.
That's the problem. It became divisive when they put Nick Foles in, and there were certain receivers that gelled with him, and then you had certain receivers that just gelled with Carson, and all of a sudden it seemed like there was a fractured locker room, which really hasn't changed even with Nick Foles gone. All right, let's move on to the undefeated and the undeterred New England Patriots team, a team led by an incredible defense on one side and by, well, Tom Brady on the other. Brady is playing in his 20th season. Over the past few years, we know this, he has quite emphatically shut down any rumors of walking away from the game. But yesterday, during an interview on WEEI, the 42-year-old was singing a slightly different tune as he enters the final year of his deal. Take a listen to this.
I don't know. And I think that's been a unique situation that, I've been in, because I think when you commit to a team, for a certain amount of years, you kind of feel like your responsibility is to always fulfill the contract. And, for me, it's been good because I'm just taking it day by day and I'm enjoying what I have. And I don't know what the future holds. And the great part is, for me, football at this point is all borrowed time. I never expected to play 20 years, and I'm playing on a great team, and it's just been an incredible 20 years of my life.
I'm going to play till I'm 45. I think I'm going to take it day by day. 45, day by day. Seems like there's a bit of his own little personal conflict there. What do you make of what Tom Brady had to say?
No, there's no conflict. Tom Brady wants to play till he's 45. His wife doesn't want him playing until he's 45, and Bill Belichick will not give him an answer. Bill Belichick has told him, you're working day to day, you're working check to check, and that's the reason why. Because Tom Brady right now, if him and Robert Kraft could work it out, they would sign a 3-year extension, about $30 million a year. He wouldn't be the highest paid, but he'd be up there just for ego purposes.
So why not just say, you know what, I haven't wavered. I've always said I wanted to play till I'm 45. That's what I want to play.
The reason why is because it doesn't help New England. It doesn't help them win this week. It's not the New England way. It will be everything going against Bill Belichick. Because as soon as he said that, the word would get to Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick would have a conversation with them. What are you doing now? You think you know what's best for the organization? You've been trusting me for 20 years. Now you're not going to trust me? So even as good as his relationship is with Kraft, Kraft can't even give Tom Brady a contract extension, because then he would be reneging on what he told Belichick. And that's, you control the roster. You make all these decisions. I'll have my input and everything, but ultimately it's up to Bill there in New England. And that's why Tom Brady, that's why he's the best example. That's why he's a great captain there, because he is towing the line just like everyone else. The street free agent, Jacoby, the wide receiver.
Jacoby Myers.
Yes, him and Tom Brady in the same boat. And I know it's hard for people to believe, but that's the system that Bill Belichick, and when it works at its absolute best, that is the theme. The man at the top of the totem pole and the man barely in the door feel the same way. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow because of that guy.
That totem pole isn't like this. It's horizontal. There might be an order of seniority or order of accomplishment, but there's no total. Right. Exactly. There's one guy at the top. It's Belichick, and then he's got 53 pawns, and one of the pawns happens to be the GOAT, but don't matter. The most important thing Tom Brady said in that, because Tom Brady's very careful with what he says. He does these interviews. He's done this weekly interview on EEI forever. So very often he says nothing, but sometimes he says something, and you have to listen very carefully to what he said. The most important word in there was contract. He said, you fulfill your contract. And he knows he does not have a contract past this season. And so, to Chris's point, if he said, of course, I'd love to have a contract till I'm 45, then the question is, well, why don't you? If you'd love it, we know we have every reason to believe you're not holding out for the most money possible.
You've more than earned it.
You've earned it. You guys have been to 3 straight Super Bowls. A couple years ago, you won the damn league MVP. Like, you in the last game where you had to be a high-powered offense, you went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and won on the road. So why don't you have a contract? And the answer is because Belichick won't give him one. So will Brady be able to make it to 45? I don't know. Last year was statistically the worst year he's had in a decade, and this year statistically he's worse. He's still the greatest 42-year-old quarterback we've ever seen, but right now that quarterback rating has him sandwiched between Gardner Minshew and Case Keenum. Right now there's a team being carried by their defense that has not put a lot of weapons or protection around Tom Brady. But Bill Belichick wouldn't give him a 1-year extension. 1 year, much less the 3 years he would need to make it to 45.
If you were Bill Belichick, would you want Tom Brady to be your quarterback for the next 3 years?
No. And that's obvious. That's obvious to him. Tom better not get injured. And the last 2 years, Bill Belichick told him how he felt about him. Last year he gave him more bonus money.
But not
He
real
didn't
money.
get it.
Yep.
He didn't get those bonuses. He didn't get those incentives. And this year, they changed up his contract. They changed the dollar amount. They didn't change the length. So he came to him and asked him, and he told him no. So that's what Tom Brady's telling us in the interview. We can say whatever we want about Tom Brady. Man, this is what Bill Belichick, he is the reason. And you can talk about, oh, man, him and Mr. Kraft. Okay. All right. If Bill Belichick is running that thing in New England, and that interview right there was enough evidence to be able to seal the deal.
If Tom Brady makes it to 45, which is almost impossible to think about, but he's 3 years away, I think the only way he makes it to 45 is with a different team. I don't think Bill Belichick is signing up for Tom
Another
Brady
3 years,
age 45-year-old season unless all of a sudden. Now, by the way, he was showing about 9 years ago. He was showing a slow deterioration, and then
I don't think we're going to see the third iteration.
I don't think so either. I think that would be no matter how
physically. I think that would be near impossible.
Let's not forget, Bill Belichick got that defense the same way that when he inherited Tom Brady, he can win a couple Super Bowls with anybody back there with that type of defense that they're playing.
We are back now on First Things First with Super Bowl champ Greg Jennings. Good morning, Greg.
What's happening? Good morning, Jenna.
Everything good?
Everything's
What's up, C?
Welcome back, man. Nice blue suit.
Thank you. You too.
Nice blue suit.
All right, Greg, it's been the season of... I thought you had something really important to say. I opened it up. No, it was, clearly.
Yeah,
hey, it's been the season of backup quarterbacks this year. In Carolina, the outlook was bleak when Cam Newton went out with a Liz Frank injury that has kept him out since week 2. Kyle Allen stepped up, and has gone undefeated starting in Cam's place, and that has led to speculation that Cam could get moved. A new report says that teams are, quote, highly interested in trading for Cam Newton. All right, Greg, with everything we know about Cam, that's my follow-up question. Could he help a contender this season? Could you see him going to another team to help them out?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I could see him going to another team and helping them out. This game this week is obviously a big week for the Panthers with them playing the 49ers to see what Kyle Allen really is against a really good defense.
The first real tough opponent
Absolutely.
that Kyle Allen's going to face.
He looks good, and he probably stays starting at quarterback. And if he doesn't, then there's going to be some escalated trade talks about Cam Newton. If there were a team that I would say I would be on the phone yesterday, the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears. If you insert Cam Newton right now with that Chicago Bears offensive roster, with their defense the way it is, that team is a Super Bowl contender right away. Right away. The curve that we've seen Mitchell Trubisky on as far as the progression is offensively, it's been minimal.
Or it's maybe even been a regression.
It really has
been the opposite.
It really has. And so if you insert somebody like Cam Newton, you already start ahead of where you are with Mitchell Trubisky today.
Before you jump to where he could play, do you think Kyle Allen could be the starting quarterback here? You don't think this is still Cam's team?
Well, listen, there is a spot for Cam that makes perfect sense. A team that has suffered a quarterback injury, whose defense is playing like a top 5 defense, who's won a bunch of games in a row because of the defense, even though the backup quarterbacks played admirably. That spot's Carolina. I mean, that if Cam Newton were not on Carolina, and Carolina was like, wow, the defense has been great. We have a near league MVP caliber running back. We've got a backup quarterback who we think has a very defined ceiling, even though he's playing well. That's the type of team that would want to bring in Cam Newton. So if I were the Panthers, I think it would be a grave mistake to move off Cam Newton when he has an opportunity to be the quarterback for the best defense that he has had in 4 or 5 years. If you look at the defensive stats across football, the Patriots, the Niners, and the Panthers are top 3 in different. Well, the Patriots are number 1 in basically everything.
Right.
And then the Panthers and the Niners battle back and forth for 2 and 3. So I don't think the Panthers should do it. If they were to do it, I don't know a person in the world that disagrees with Greg that Chicago's the team that you say is a quarterback away from potentially making noise in the NFC.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a contender, though. When you're talking about someone like Cam Newton, you have to, will he have another chance to be a franchise quarterback? Now, as far as Kyle Allen, even though he might be the starting quarterback, Jenna, Cam Newton is the face of the Carolina Panthers. You can see it in the practices. You can see the way he does his interviews and everything. Now, you might have some younger player who's taking your spot, but Cam, the mark he's put on that region down there, that won't change. And Kyle Allen is not the quarterback of the future there. He might be starting now, but if they decide to move off of Cam, they're still looking for a quarterback.
So what am I missing? Why is this a conversation of moving off of Cam? It's not a conversation in New Orleans.
Well, it was going to be a conversation before the season started based on Cam's lack of consistency, based on his injury history, based on they do have a new owner, and next year it'll be the first time they can get off of Cam at a reasonable price. So we were going to be having these conversations, and then he gets a different type of injury. So now we don't know how to evaluate this new throwing motion that he's tried to change the last couple years. We saw last year at the beginning of the season, his throwing motion did improve. His accuracy did improve. But he's been hurt since then. So we can't even really assess his ability fairly. We're viewing it on the past Cam that has been inconsistent. I believe he's more than good enough to be a franchise quarterback, and not only Chicago, Cincinnati, Miami, Tennessee, and the Chargers, although they need a quarterback for their future. And that's just the start.
I agree with everything that you're saying, and I'll add to that the reason why we're even talking about it is because when you have suffered the injuries that Cam has, and then a quarterback comes in and he wins with the team that you've been kind of inconsistent with as far as wins and losses, it's going to create question. You look at the New Orleans Saints, there's no doubt that we all know who that guy is in Drew Brees. He's the guy. Mm-hmm. But there's question, well, should Drew Brees play? Should he not? When should he come back? Because of the impressive play of the backup quarterback. This is what happens when you have good backup quarterbacks that can insert and come in and win games for you.
Yeah. But you just said he's not a great backup quarterback. He's just an okay backup quarterback. Does Carolina look at Kyle Allen like the future?
This is what we don't know. He's not a high draft pick. All right, that doesn't mean he can't be good. We've had a few quarterbacks have ascended from nowhere. He doesn't have the arm talent of guys that we think. We don't think he can throw the ball down the field, drive it through the wind. He's not an elite athlete. So we're not saying he's a young quarterback. For us to say he's he's a young quarterback.
And what he has done, to his credit, is not make the killer mistake. He's throwing no picks. When you've got a great defense and the best running back in the NFL, the quarterback's job can be, if you are limited from a talent perspective, don't kill us.
Right.
And Cam, while he was injured, was killing them. Like Cam, while he was injured, was not able to do what Kyle Allen's been able to do. I just want to say one other team, because you mentioned them on your list of teams. And they're a team that I think it could make sense for right now and for the future. And that's Tennessee.
Yes.
Tennessee is the leader in that division's got 4 wins. They got 3. Like Tennessee, we know the style of football Vrabel wants to play. We know the quality of the running game, the quality of their defense, and we know Mariota is done. And they can't be like, we feel great about Ryan Tannehill moving forward. And so if he were to be moved this season for a team that says we want to try to make the most out of this season and the future, Tennessee is the team. Everyone's going to say Chicago, and I agree with you. Chicago should be the number 1 team. Tennessee is one to keep an eye out for as well.
Here at Greg Jennings. Greg, let's talk some Baker Mayfield. Tough test for the Browns this weekend when they face the New England Patriots. And while Baker should be laser focused on that game, he's still not over his last game against the Seahawks. There were combined 19 penalties in the loss to Seattle, which prompted Baker to go off in the postgame. He was subsequently fined, and yesterday he responded to that.
Freedom of speech, I thought, it's okay, but I get fined for it. It's the league. That's what they do. They fine you for some ridiculous things. It's just how it is. But there's a reason everybody's talking about it. It's not just me. It goes for every team. And just with how our team is, we're not going to get a lot of calls. And we know that, especially going into this week. No, I knew I was going to get fined, but it needs to be said. People have to be held accountable for their job. When it affects my job, it sucks because it's not in my control.
I'm sure that's going to change everything now because the refs are going to be like, our bad, Baker. Nick, what'd you make of what Baker had to say? Continuing to
there's a lot of ludicrous statements there. One is freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is to guarantee the government will not persecute you for your speech. Not that your employer will not penalize you for violating their norms, standards, and practices. That's first of all. Second of all, it's not a conspiracy if they're all out to get us. Baker, we know we're not going to get a lot of calls. Yeah. What's the 345 Park Avenue, I think's the address. They all had a meeting before the season. Let's stick it to the Browns.
Yeah, Troy Vincent's after him.
Right. The last thing
he runs the referees.
What they desperately want in the NFL offices is for a team with Baker and Odell and a team that has been bad forever but has a diehard loyal fan base. They want them to be bad again. That's exactly what the NFL wants. But most importantly, the most important word he said, Greg, was accountability. Baker, I love you. You're my guy, man. But you got to show the accountability, man. You have been a turnover factory. Once upon a time, they called Cleveland the sadness factory. He has been a turnover factory. That is the problem. You guys, in week 1, were in a 2-point game against Tennessee until you started thinking you played for the Titans and throwing them the ball in the fourth quarter of that game. And in the most recent game you played, you jumped all over Seattle, and you could not hold on. That's why you're 2-4. That's why you're flailing. That's why you're desperate. And so we can say, listen, some of those interceptions aren't on him, I'm sure. I know that to be true, but there's also some picks that could have been that he got lucky there weren't. He is on a list above Jameis, above Rosen, above Josh Allen as far as most interceptions, most turnovers since he became a starting quarterback. That, among other things, is the biggest issue with the Cleveland Browns, not whether or not the referees have it out for them.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The accountability is huge. He has to have some sense of self-awareness. When you start saying things like the refs are affecting my job, no, it starts with your level of play and what you have not been able to do. Last year, we weren't listening to media talks about Baker talking about the referees and what they were doing or were not doing.
That's true.
Why? Because he was having success.
Sure.
He was the splash. He was the new toy. No one really knew what to expect. And now teams have game planned him. They understand his weaknesses. They understand how to get at him. Obviously, their offensive line suffers. They're not. Yes. They don't have a good offensive line, which that affects his level of play as well. But when you're talking about the refs constantly week in and week out, at some point you just got to stop it and play ball. It's not going to change. The referees aren't going to stop throwing flags. They're not going to stop penalizing you for what they deem to be a foul. So just play.
Right. Out of 32 teams, none of the players and coaches are happy with the refs. None of them. It's consistent. And that goes from wherever you want to go, whoever your team is, the Chargers to Gillette. I can guarantee Belichick, every week he sends in stuff. You miss calls. But what he's done is he's trained his team. We're not going to talk about it. And when we're on to Cincinnati, you have to learn how to be a pro. And in the pros, you have to learn to move from week to week, from play to play, from good fortune to misfortune. You have to be able to do it. It's part of being a pro. I'm just going to let Baker know, though. I'm going to let him in on the secret, because last year when he had that success and everything was going for him, you know what the league office decided to do? We're going to put you, Baker, in more commercials than any other player we have. You know why? Because those people you're representing are our partners. You had an opportunity. You couldn't do nothing when you were at Oklahoma. You wouldn't be no marketing darling if you weren't with the NFL. So our most prestigious partners, we've extended all of them. You got more commercials than Aaron. You got more commercials than Patty. You got more commercials than the GOAT and Tom Brady. So what the league did was said, we're going to allow you to make a lot of money. But Troy went to the referees and said, hey, guys, I want you guys to make it harder on him because we want him to look bad because we're trying to promote him.
Go ahead, C.
So he doesn't realize how idiotic he sounds. The league is better when that team is better.
They are.
That fan base, it's better. It's no different than the Rams. The Rams came back from nowhere. The league is better. There is no team that the league profits off of it being bad.
And there is no sport where the league is better off if the number 1 overall pick of a draft is not a star. That it is, listen, there's only so many, in the NFL in particular, guys who have a chance to have, with the helmet on, everyone knows who they are. He's one of them. You know what really hurt the league? I heard it to a degree. Tim Couch and got guys that go number one, former Brown picks that fizzle out because you have some built-in. One of the things college football does for the NFL free of charge is a whole lot of publicity leading up to it.
Farm system. We're going to train them for you. Get them big, strong, fast.
Train them for you and
free.
And market them for you and allow them to become personalities. And if Baker was trying to have a big esoteric discussion about the lack of accountabilities of the officials versus the players and the coaches and whether or not the NFL should hold its officials to a higher standard, great.
But
that is a behind closed doors discussion that I think people could agree with him on. But the idea that we are being persecuted, there is almost no personality trait I personally find more of a turnoff than a victim complex, especially when you ain't one. When, to Chris's point, you've not only been given every opportunity, but the league has suggested you, hey, is State Farm or whomever it is, I don't even know where he's doing all the
Greg, you ever done a commercial with the league?
A couple, but not as many as this guy right here.
Right. The league called you.
But
that
they
company didn't call you.
You make a great point because they have a list of guys that they go down. They literally have a list of guys.
They skipped over a bunch of players to give him those endorsements.
This was one of Chris's criticisms of Odell when Odell was getting sideways, is that the league had, with Odell, not only for non-league brands, but in the commercial with Eli, where he's picking him up and they're doing the dirty dancing scene, that was an NFL. The product was the NFL. It wasn't Visa. It was the NFL. And so,
don't you see the irony here? We're talking about him being a pro and having accountability. Guess who he's playing on Sunday? Tom Brady. Like, they're playing the Patriots. You want to talk about cleaning up your game? Good luck against that defense, A, and B, try to be remotely close to the person that Tom Brady is day in and day out when it comes to accountability.
Yeah, it's Nick and I's fault, because we should have listened to you. You said they ain't played the game. I don't know if this is going to work out. You did. We should have listened to you. We should.
I'm not ready to give up on them yet, for the record.
I know.
I'm not ready yet.
I'm with you. Nick. I'm not ready to give up.
Much appreciated.
I think they might win this weekend.
On to the Saints now. They have gone undefeated while their future Hall of Fame quarterback, Drew Brees, has been out with that thumb injury. Just don't tell Michael Jordan, because Brees is now back at practice and is itching to get back on the field.
Don't be saying that with his name. No.
It's true. Do that. When asked about playing Sunday against the Cardinals, he said, quote, "That's the plan." Here's what Brees had to say about gripping the football with that injured thumb.
Like if you grip a baseball, right, you're here, right? Even you grip a basketball, you're just kind of dribbling.Maybe you're going to palm it every now and then, but to shoot, it's really on your fingertips. Football is the one where you really have to extend your thumb all the way around into a pretty large angle. I mean, look at the spread between pinky and thumb. That's hard to do, and then to provide the type of pressure that's needed with that thumb to then transfer all that energy that you bring from ground force and torque with your body to translate that energy into the ball, right? And so that was probably the hardest part, was just getting it to where I could grip the ball again and grip it with authority, grip it with strength, and then be able to guide the ball, maneuver the ball out of my hand.
They couldn't find one football in the locker room that didn't have a price tag on it? I mean, honestly. All right, see, $49.99. Use that one. What did you make of what you
I'm going to pull up a chair here. I want to see this.
Well, that was amazing, because I would say of the great quarterbacks that we've ever had play the game, there hadn't been one more technical. Drew Brees at slightly under 6 foot, not 200 pounds, not a tremendous athlete, but how does he generate all those throwing yards, all that power throwing the ball? It's everything. He is so wired into his feet being connected to the ground, to his legs, to his torso, to his shoulder. But ultimately, he knows with this football, the NFL football, the largest in circumference, the longest without the stripes on it, and now you can't doctor up the ball. So his ability to be able to grip it with his thumb and control it, it's a lot easier when you're playing indoors, but once they go out into the elements and everything, so when you break that bone right there, man, I'm shocked that he's able to come back as fast as he is. It's a common injury to quarterbacks. They throw a lot and hit it on someone's helmet, a lot on their own offensive lineman helmets. But to see him explain it, to me, it was in the same category of last year when we had Kevin Durant. And he was talking about playing offensive basketball. Drew Brees, I'm telling you, the most technical. Him, Tom Brady, the rest of these guys, Marino, Elway, Rodgers, Farve, gifted. My man Brady and Drew Brees, very, very technical. And I just thought that was a gem. Him explaining to us what the thumb totally means in the overall throwing and of flighting the football.
I've heard you talk about Dan Marino, and I think it's the case with Aaron Rodgers as well, maybe Patrick Mahomes, that they can throw the ball without the laces.
Yes.
That they can grip it from anywhere. If it's in the shotgun, they don't have to readjust it.
Yep.
For Brady and Brees.
Either size of hand and strength of hand. All right. Typically, we teach kids when they throw the football, we want them to grab the laces because it helps them out.
So with Brady and Brees, or let's just Brees specifically, because of his size and because you're talking about here, he needs to. Everything there has to be just right for him to be the player he wants to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's relying on all of it to be able to vary the throws that he wants to. And that's why he can drive the ball with anticipation, because he knows that his lower half is connected to his core, and his core is connected to his shoulder. But ultimately, he knows that if I can't control the ball, I'm not going to be able to create enough power to build a play.
Just quickly, I apologize, Jenna. When you said the lower half, one of the things that I took from that was a lot of that was, to be honest, probably over my and a lot of the audience's head. But when he said the ground force, he is someone who, he told you last year, man, I work as hard at this as anybody.
Yes.
I just don't talk about it as much as certain people.
I'm in as good a shape.
In as good a shape, and he is. It's when you say ground force, that's not something he pulled out of nowhere. That's working with not only a quarterback's coach, but maybe someone that's into biomechanics to teach him how you generate this type of power.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the World Series last night. It reminded me of what John Smoltz said, because the Astros brought out a pitcher who had hurt his knee, and he talked about how as a pitcher,
very similar,
your ankle really matters on your front foot or your back foot, your knee, and it was hearing someone explain the full mechanics of what goes into throwing the football if you can't just flick it easily the way Marino or Farve or Rodgers can.
So if he is going to play this week, and if he is going to be successful, how close to 100% do you think he'll have to be if he does, again, want to be successful and be able to grip at full strength?
Yeah, I definitely think he's between 90 and to 100%, because with that thumb, the way it supports the ball and the way they're going to throw it, he can't. This is not an injury, a high ankle sprain. We saw Tyron Smith last week come back after a couple weeks with Dallas at left tackle. You can hide it there. You can tape it up. You can do preventative things. I can bring another tight end over there to build a camouflage so that people won't know. At quarterback with an injured thumb on your throwing hand, there's no way we can hide it. Now, I'll watch the game plan, and I'll see how the game plans out. And if they're not flighting the ball more than 25 yards down, that's the adjustment that Sean Payton and the staff have made, saying Drew can play, but he's not up to the point where we have the full complement of what Drew Brees and typically he can do with his throwing talent.
And if we see him this weekend, because of how Teddy's played, because they're 5-0, because the Saints offense is coming off their best game of the year, dropping 36 on Chicago, we will know it's because he's totally ready. It's not a situation where it's like, man, we've gone 2-3. If we go 2-4 without Drew,
we need him. We got to rush him back.
You remember a couple years ago when Rodgers had the broken collarbone, you didn't know when he would come back. Shockingly, he came back from the collarbone the week they started approaching, well, if we lose another game, our season's over.
Right. Yeah, rushed him back.
Rushed him back a bit. We know
point.
He's not being rushed back, especially they're against Arizona, and then they have a bye. I think they believe they can beat Arizona without him, and then he'd have an extra week.
Rest.
So if he's out there, it's because they are fully confident he's ready to go.
Start your weekend strong with the biggest game in the country on Big Noon Saturday. Number 13, Wisconsin, looking to bounce back against number 3, the Ohio State, in a huge midseason showdown. Coverage begins with Big Noon kickoff on site in Columbus at 11 Eastern, and that is on Fox. And joining us now, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champ, 7-time Pro Bowler, and the Ohio State legend, Orlando Pace. Welcome to the show, Orlando.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Big weekend for us.
It sure is.
Well, let's start with that. Let's talk some Ohio State. Should Wisconsin be on upset alert against the Badgers?
The Buckeyes.
The Buckeyes? I'm sorry.
Absolutely not. But obviously Wisconsin had that tough loss last week against Illinois. They'll come into this game hungry, fired up, ready to play. But I think what Ryan Day's done with our program, he really got those guys ready to play week in and week out. So I'm excited to see what they do this weekend.
Now, we're taking the pregame to Ohio State. So Urban is going to be coming back as a TV analyst working for Fox. Explain. You and I both grew up in Ohio, and we had the opportunity to be able to go anywhere to be able to play football. One of the reasons why we decided was not just the great players, but was the atmosphere. Explain the type of atmosphere at noon is going to be waiting there for the Wisconsin Badgers.
They're going to be fired up in the shoe on Saturday. Obviously, Wisconsin, that's a great program in itself. But obviously, our fans, I feel like they're the best in the country. So they're going to be fired up. Urban's going to be in the house. Everybody's going to be excited to see him. And then obviously, we got to go out and play the way we've been playing for the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Well, the last 6, 7 weeks, you could argue the last 6 or 7 years, most weekends, from Urban right into Ryan Day. Cris talks a lot about the difference in the feeling and the atmosphere of his pro career to his collegiate career. Obviously, there's no pro stadiums that fit as many people as Horseshoe, but also people talk about the pageantry of college football. To me, it's more about the passion of the fans, and that city of Columbus is the university. It's a major American city. It's got even a pro sports team, a hockey team, but it's about Ohio State. What are the young people feeling like this weekend, or going into this weekend, which is one of their very biggest games of the year and maybe their biggest home game?
Well, this is why you choose to go to Ohio State. Obviously, because the fan base is great in these type of games. You get 2 or 3 of these games a year in Columbus in the Big Ten. So obviously, everything that we've done in the past, our tradition with Cris and a lot of other great Buckeye players, it just brings that all to the forefront this weekend.
Listen, you could have come out here and we could easily talk to you about the NFL and your very successful career, but we decided to focus on Ohio State. What is it about that school and that atmosphere that these guys and Cris talk about all the time, that even years after you've played there, you still want to go back? You still want to talk about it? You still want to talk about Ryan Day? You still want to really be a part of it all?
Well, Cris can tell you this. In that locker room, even when you're in the pros, you still love the school you came from. The league is a business. The NFL is a business. So when you're in college, you're first getting it. That's your first taste of freedom.
Yeah.
You're there. Everything is great. You don't get cut from a college team.
Nope.
You know what I mean? And so you always have your allegiance and your passion for your universities. No matter how long you're away from it, you're always proud of where you came from.
Let's talk about some of the pressure. Orlando Pace's first game at Ohio State. I remember the huge expectations. He was the #1 recruit in the state. We had to have him. We ended up getting him. But I remember his first game, they walked me to him on the field. He was warming up in the end zone and told him he's going to be the next great tackle. He's going to win all the awards, and he was able to live up to that. Justin Fields, he transfers from Georgia. As a young player coming in with all these expectations and seeing, wow, he's just as good as some of the other quarterbacks that we have. Explain that to us, because that is a tough thing for a young athlete to be able to deal with.
It is, especially coming in that situation where there's so much tradition at Ohio State, so many different things. You have to understand the Big Ten football in Ohio State and what that means to be the Ohio State quarterback. I think Ryan Day done a great job really grooming him and getting him ready for these moments. He's one of those players that came in, he runs when he has to, and he can throw the ball really well too. And we got some weapons for him to throw the ball. I think in years past, we relied on the quarterback to run the ball. And now, he can sit in the pocket, run when he has to, and really make some big plays for us.
The team you guys are up against has the best running back in the country, and it seems like year in, year out, if not the best offensive line, it's always one of the very best offensive lines. As I understand, it's obviously the position you played. I'm asking you to kind of go to the opposite side of things. This great Ohio State defensive front, what type of problems will the Wisconsin offensive line present for them?
Well, when you look at Wisconsin's offensive line, they got guys 330 on that offensive line, and they get those big Wisconsin recruits. And they come in there and they can run the ball. That's what they're bred to do. So this will be Ohio State defensive line, toughest challenge to date. Chase Young and those boys up front, they're going to have to move and scheme or do some stunts or something like that, and really try to stop Jonathan Taylor, because once he gets ahead of steam, he's one of the best backs in the country.
One of the running, I don't want to call it jokes, but funny themes we have on our show is how big of a fan of Jim Harbaugh Nick has been, and CC perhaps not as much.
He's going to out me in front of the greatest Ohio State Buckeye ever.
Are you surprised with how inconsistent Michigan has been this year, what you've seen from them?
I love it. I love the inconsistency.
What would I expect anything less?
But you know what? I am a little surprised. I think when you get a coach like that to come into a program like that, you expect him to adjust to what's going on with today's college football. And it doesn't seem like they're making that adjustment. They're still running some plays, or their offense doesn't seem like it's evolving as much as some of the other college programs in the country.
Pace, you know that Ohio State, there's been no team that's been great unless they have big dudes up front. I remember our offensive line coach, Mr. Miles, he used to say, I'm not even recruiting a kid unless he wears at least a size 16 shoe. You remember hearing that story? At least a size 16 shoe. Man, they got some young kids that Corey Stringer, all the great linemen. Did you see the young kid this weekend playing?
Oh,
the
yeah.
left tackle got in the game, the 6'8",
oh my
360
God.
kid.
So I told you I'm at the Michigan State game, and I'm on the sideline, and they bring him up to introduce me to him. And I'm looking, and I'm a big guy. And I'm looking up to him, and I'm like, man, this dude is huge. But I see him play in the Northwestern game, and he can move. So
you see him scoop down the field?
Absolutely. So he can move, man. And I told him, hey, just keep your feet moving. You're a big guy. You're a big force, man, and he can do great things at Ohio State.
So one of the things that we've talked about a lot is that this is kind of an NFL question, but the way we are teaching offensive line play, I say we, but the way offensive line play is being taught at the collegiate level and then into the pros for young guys because of the new CBA and practice restrictions, things like that, it's just different. It's different than, and you're not an old timer, but it's different than when you came into the league.
Yep.
You obviously look like you could have been a pro left tackle by your sophomore year at Ohio State, so you're an anomaly. But for the young offensive lineman, how big of a learning curve is it going from collegiate to pro, and how tough is it for guys because of the decreased practice time and because college football is going so much to a spread, pass quick offense to get pro-ready offensive linemen?
I think it's tough. Even when I was coming out, it's like riding a bike again, because you're facing grown men on Sunday, guys that know technique-wise what to do. So it's almost you have to get technique conscious. And I don't think in college they're not teaching proper technique. The spread, guys aren't as physical as I think they once were. And when I was coming out, with Woody Hayes in Ohio State, it was three yards in a cloud of dust for us. So we were trying to be physical at the point. I don't know if guys are as physical today as they were years ago.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, before we get to the reason you're here, the initiative you're here, you got to just settle something for me. CC's convinced Patrick Mahomes is playing this weekend. Nick says there's no way Patrick Mahomes plays this weekend. I guess got to know what you think.
Why would you play him?
Thank you, Pace. Hall of Famer. It's been there. I appreciate you, Pace.
I'm only saying that. I saw the injury, but I'm like, hey, these guys, you have a lot of season left. And I know why he wants to play, because it's Aaron Rodgers and it's and they're playing the Packers this weekend.
How many games did you miss in your career?
Well,
wait, no, that wasn't the question. Well, that wasn't the question. How many games did you miss?
I missed it, not many, but
okay, no problem. The question, Jenna didn't ask you the right question. We were talking about Patty Mahomes. We talking about a Hall of Famer. We talking about a baller.
Yeah.
Does Pace play in the game?
Yeah, you know what? I've played injured in the game before, so yeah, it happens. I'm not saying that, but
Okay.
All right, hold on. If we're going to do that real quick, because this is my favorite question to ask all-time greats, and we've never had you to ask you this question. When you were playing, the toughest matchup, toughest guy to go against.
I always say, because I never want to give people credit, right? When you're in the Hall of Fame, you always think of a Hall of Famer. You think of a Bruce Smith or Chris Doman. Those guys, they could really play. And I always say, those are some guys. Dwight Freeney was a tough matchup for me as well, because he had a spin move. He had some moves that you just, no matter how good you set, you couldn't block it at times. So I always give those two or three guys some credit. So.
All right, Orlando, tell us about the NFL's Way to Play initiative that you're involved in.
Well, it's a way to really promote proper technique and play, and coaches and players. And this is our second year of doing it, so it gives us an opportunity to reward those guys in the NFL with a $2,500 grant to their favorite charity.
Nice.
And we have a panel of former players like myself, Merrill Hodge, Willie McGinnis, all these guys that vote on plays every week. And we just really want to promote the proper technique and play. And we also have an education educational channel as well. And I went out to LaCharles Bentley, another Buckeye, who does a fabulous job with O-line performance as well. And we shot educational videos. And it's really cool because kids can go on the YouTube channel, learn without any equipment the proper technique to play offensive line and other positions. So we're excited to be a part of it.
Need more of that. Appreciate it.
Really good stuff.
Great seeing you, bro.
Orlando, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.